Welcome to This Week in Health IT News, where we look at as many stories as we can in 20 minutes or less that will impact health IT. It's Tuesday News Day, and here's what we have on tap. We have a in-depth article on voice assistants based on a conference that happened a couple weeks ago in Jersey. We have virtual reality training for empathy, and we're going to take a look at these U.S. News and World Report rankings of hospitals. What does it mean? Is it really that important? All that kind of stuff. So looking forward to that. My name is Bill Russell, recovering healthcare CIO and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcasts and videos dedicated to developing the next generation of health IT leaders. This podcast is sponsored by Health Lyrics. Professional athletes have coaches for every aspect of their life to improve performance, which I think makes sense, yet many CIOs and health executives choose to go it alone. Technology has taken center stage for healthcare. Get an executive coach to help you with your technology. Contact Health Lyrics to schedule your free consultation. Want to support the fastest growing health IT podcast? Here's 5 ways you can do it. Share it with a peer. Follow our social accounts, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. Interact and repost our social media content. Send me feedback, Bill at thisweekinhealthit.com. And subscribe to our newsletter on the website. And as I've been telling you, we have 2 new offerings. One is dedicated to developing your career. This Week in Health IT Insights. You can go to the website and sign up for that. You get insights twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, that is designed specifically to help you with your career. And then the other is This Week in Health IT staff meeting, where once a week you get a new set of thinking that you can introduce your staff to and kick off your staff meeting with a dynamic conversation and expose them to some new thinking. So let's get to the news. There's a great article from our recent guest this past Friday, Ann Weiler, who attended a conference in the Voice Summit in New Jersey just a couple weeks back. And I'm going to go into this a little bit because it was really fascinating to me as I sort of dug into it. They talk about the fact that voice is one of those emerging technologies really going to impact healthcare. And this conference not only delved into voice across all industries, but even had a healthcare track where they talked specifically about voice. So let's see. This is what Ann shared with us. We're at the beginning of the end of the first phase of voice. James Poulter, CEO of Vixen Labs. The beginning of the end of the first phase might be optimistic for voice, but it did not dampen the enthusiasm at the second annual Voice Summit in Jersey this week. Another speaker likened voice to being at the same stage of technology as the release of the first iPhone. If you remember, at that time, everyone else had a feature phone and Android didn't even exist at that point. Let's see, she goes on. One of the great things about this conference is that it's a cross-industry event, so specific healthcare. Then there was a specific healthcare track, which we talked about, and there was an opportunity to learn from other industries as well as focus on healthcare. So let's get into some specifics. Amazon Alexa. So Dave Isbitski, Alexa developer evangelist, kicked off the summit with a couple of announcements for Alexa skill connections, which enable one skill to invoke another skill. That's pretty interesting. It's a huge value in healthcare where every skill shouldn't have to recreate a medications list or a full lexicon of disease education, and it would be better to call on a proven authority like Mayo or WebMD to get that information. He went on to talk about some dialogue flow and some of those things. Another interesting announcement was the ability to have one skill that uses 2 languages rather than installing a separate skill for each language, which would be beneficial in healthcare to provide patient instructions, especially to family members who may have a different first language. So those are 2 interesting announcements from Amazon and the direction they're going. Samsung had some announcements. So Samsung is now in the voice assistant business with what did they call it? Theirs is called Bixby. Bixby, wow, interesting. Which is designed to be a developer platform for people to insert voice into any type of device. Microsoft has that same strategy with Cortana. The difference is that Samsung ships television and refrigerators and that can be voice enabled. So Samsung is also the voice and category, with screens being a key part of the delivery. This has some really interesting implications for healthcare if you think about the television as the focal point of the living room. Health reminders and actions delivered there could have great impact, and we talked about that a couple weeks ago. on the show. The challenge, it goes on, it says, the challenges with these modalities, though, is that it may take generations for the technology to become ubiquitous versus a $39 Echo Dot. Samsung sees the world where the voice assistant knows you across all your devices, which would definitely be helpful in a health context. So let's see, Microsoft, the voice as an ingredient, a part of IoT and AI strategy, was echoed by Microsoft. No surprises, since Cortana doesn't have a body or even a hockey puck to go with it. This strategy could be very interesting in healthcare if you think about it. Say an EpiPen with voice enabled. Why wouldn't all devices and complex equipment have voice prompts for both patients and providers? There was also a meetup group at the conference demonstrating voice running on an ARM chip, which could be very interesting for cheaper medical devices. So those were just some of the announcements and some of the conversations that were being had by some of the early vendors in the voice space. Let's see. So from the trade show floor, here's what they found. Most of the developer, was full of mostly developer tools for building, testing, and securing voice applications. And rallying cry in sessions was for the platform providers, Amazon, Google, Apple, Samsung, Microsoft, to standardize their approach to voice. If you remember back in the early days, I mean, it's got to be very difficult when you have different ways of addressing. I guess outside of like the activation, hello Siri, hello or Alexa or whatever. I would imagine this is the Wild West, and that each of the vendors is still doing their own thing. And so you hear the developers, as always happens in a maturing space, saying, "Hey, let's see if we can't get some standards here, so that we can do cross-platform development." There was also an admonition not to build apps for the sake of building apps, but to focus on the user need and to understand what the users want most of all. What most of all is convenience, and they will use the most convenient interface for the task: web, mobile, TV, phone, voice. So that's interesting. There's also a little conversation in this article, which is, by the way, on the wellpepper.com website. It's in their blog. And a little conversation about ethics. Brand. I thought brand was an interesting, along the same lines of not building voice apps for the sake of it. There was also a lot of talk how your brand is reflected in your app. Not all healthcare systems think of their brand impact, although they should, and the voice skill is an extension of that. Interestingly, Dave Ciccarelli from Voices.com, which has Voice Talent, mentioned that most developers use the standard Alexa voice. It's not surprising, as it's expensive to have someone record every possible response for your application, although it's interesting to think about a world where the healthcare app actually has a physician speaking, and he talked about really getting a voice brand for your specific health system. So that's fascinating in itself. Users, I mean, the key thing about this user aspect is voice is for every generation, and there is this new voice first generation that's coming up. They tend to know how to use voice and how to get the most from voice, and that was interesting. But they also talked about seniors, and everyone's really using voice. So here's the wrap up. We've written before about the use cases for voice in healthcare, and there are many, from documenting clinical visits, transcribing physician notes and medication adherence, education, and patient care plans, as well voice biomarkers, which my fellow panelists called a huge pool of untapped diagnostic data. If we're at the early days of voice apps, we're also at the early days of voice data. There's a ton to be discovered, and the research, especially in healthcare, is just starting. Our expectations for voice are high. Let's hope it delivers. I find that to be a great summary of the conference and the things that are going on within voice. Seems like a conference that has some value, especially for healthcare. They have that healthcare track. I think you'll probably see this start to pop up at the HIMSS conference as well. A lot of talk about voice and how it can be used in healthcare. It's already being used. I mean, we did a interview with Nuance. We got to see their how they are taking it into the exam room, especially around orthopedics and other things. Voice is the next generation. It is early, so let's say the things you're going to be doing today are going to be cutting edge. Within about 5 years, they're going to be pretty standard, and within let's say 7 years, it's going to be price of admission. If your health system doesn't have a way to interact with you via voice, you're probably going to be left out. Hopefully by then there will be enough vendors hopping into the space. So that's the so what on that article. I find voice to be a really interesting space and loaded with opportunity for startups, developers, and health systems that have the scale to invest in it. So let's go to the next one. Again, another interesting application of technology. If you're wondering, this is a very slow news cycle. August, it tends to be slow. A lot of people on vacation, not a lot of announcements coming out. So I'm really focusing in on 3 things. And I'm also, again, I'm still on the road. 2 weeks straight of being on the road doing client work. And so I am, again, broadcasting over the weekend from outside. So this story is from Georgetown University Medical Center. Virtual reality training helps medical students develop real empathy. Fascinating use of this. So imagine your favorite grandmother is showing signs of dementia. She progresses from forgetting who her son is to forgetting what day it is, and she's supposed to host Easter dinner. When your family arrives that day, she doesn't seem to recognize you. She's still in her bathrobe and hasn't made her traditional soup. Her traditional soup. But what's it like for her? A new virtual reality software is allowing students at Georgetown University School of Medicine to get a better sense of what aging patients experience, and to see the decisions and emotions that patients and their families may face at the end of their lives. Using a virtual reality headset and Embodied Labs software, students enter the body of the patient who is experiencing one of 3 conditions: macular degeneration, hearing loss, cancer and end of life, or memory loss. Users watch and participate in a 3D video as the patient's family members talk to them and expect them to respond and hear the thoughts of the person whose body they're in. The aim is to teach empathy, said Linda Van Kuren, Assistant Dean of Resources and Access Management at the Dahlgren Memorial Library, the Graduate Health and Life Sciences Research Library at Georgetown University Medical Center. We think it's a unique combination. For instance, in the dementia scenario, the viewer sees how difficult the experience is for the patient as well as the children, who are slow to realize the Alzheimer's disease is affecting her, in part because it's hard to let go of their expectations of who their mother is. Pamela Saunders, PhD, who directs the 2-week clerkship, says software helps students to get exposed to different medical conditions and exposes them so that they can see the limitations of things like macular degeneration. There's that hole in your vision, and you're moving all your head all over the place to see a specific spot. It's hard to imagine what it is unless you get that opportunity to use this type of virtual reality software. Saunders said one of the clerkship participants wrote afterward that because of the VR's greater interactivity, the student felt a stronger connection to the patient's family members and could see how patients might be saddened by the effect of his diagnosis has on them. The kids compare it to the Magic School Bus, if you can remember that, said Angela Barr, Reference and Digital Information Services Coordinator at the library. Many of those kids have not had any experience with virtual reality before, and most of their responses are quite enthusiastic. This is a great use. This is a phenomenal use of virtual reality. This is the one thing that's really hard to teach. Either people come to healthcare with it, and most people in healthcare do have a strong sense of empathy. But this is, this is really interesting, and it's something I think that will help future generations. It'll help me potentially with my kids to understand their grandparents and what they're going through. There's a lot of practical application for this. We'll see. We'll see how it expands over the coming years, and I look forward to really more virtual reality type use cases. One of the use cases I think was we took a look at it a little while ago. I think it was UCLA. Others were using it really around macular degeneration, virtual reality headsets or augmented reality was actually enabling people with macular degeneration to see, because it was able to bring in those things and to focus the eye on those things. So a lot of great use cases are just around the corner for virtual reality. I hope we can tap into them. You know what was interesting? I was out on LinkedIn, and it seemed like every other post was our hospital was the U.S. News and World Report best fill in the blank. And there was, I'm not exaggerating, there's probably about 20 of these on LinkedIn, and when I sort of tooled around. So I thought, you know what, it would be interesting to do a little bit of a dive into this to see, you know, what's the value of the U.S. News and World Report top list, and does it really make a difference, and who's really watching and who really cares. Now, this might sound cynical, but in my research, I found it really does matter, and it's really interesting. So, you know, first thing you need to know is there's a lot of lists. I mean, U.S. News is just one of them. You have health grades. You have, let's see, you have Blue Cross does one, CareChex does one, health grades, I think I already mentioned. You have Leapfrog, you have LGBTQ, you have Parkinson's does one, you have Press Ganey does one. It's, you know, and so you can understand how I start off. Watson does one as well. You can understand how I start off, and I'm a little, and actually this list goes on and on. Holy cow. There's just a ton of these lists. And so if you don't get on the U.S. News one, try to get on another one so that you can, you know, publish that in your community. So there's part of me that was a little cynical, because you see these lists all the time, and you know, every hospital has their little banner that says, you know, we're, you know, top on Watson's list, we're top on this list, we're top on that list. And I thought, you know, do hospitals really care about this? And then I found this story. And this is recent. This is from August 1st, 2019. Duke University Hospital falls out of nation's top 20 hospitals. And this is from the Duke Chronicle. So this is in Carolina, in that community, and said Duke University Hospital did not make the cut for the U.S. News and World Report 2019-20 honor roll. The Best Hospitals honor roll evaluates hospitals' performance in medical procedures and specialties according to the Tuesday news release that announced the rankings. This year's honor roll included best 21 hospitals for more than 4,500 facilities, but it did not include Duke University Hospital. Last year, the hospital sat at 19th, barely making the honor roll. It was deemed to be the 17th best in the country 2 years ago. As a health system that prides itself on continuous improvement, we are not satisfied with the results of the 2019-20 U.S. News and World Report Best Hospitals rankings, but we also know that they are not a comprehensive reflection of the outstanding care that we provide to our patients every day, wrote Thomas Owens, president of Duke University Hospital, in an email to the Chronicle. You know what's interesting to me? First of all, it matters. It got written up in this way. I mean, you fall out of the top 20, you're known as a prestigious university, and you drop out. I think it matters. I think it matters to them, and they're sort of communicating that it matters to them. Yes, it doesn't reflect the fact that it doesn't reflect on the people of Duke University Medical Center. They provide phenomenal care for their patients. But the prestige of the university takes a hit, and the prestige of the hospital takes a hit as a result of this. So it does matter. And people, you know, and people, especially people who work at the institution, do care about these things. Let's see. Another thing which, you know, do people care about these? In October, St. Anthony Hospital in Chicago sued the Leapfrog Group, claiming an organization knowingly used inaccurate information to downgrade its safety grade from an A to a C. The Safety Net Hospital said it repeatedly pressed Leapfrog to correct the score before the report's release date, and said the group's failure to respond amounted to defamation. Leapfrog eventually took St. Anthony off the website. The lawsuit has since been dismissed. In another case, the Ohio plastic surgeon filed defamation lawsuit after a patient wrote an anonymous online reviews criticizing the doctor's work. You know, these reviews and these rankings mean something, and I think hospitals recognize that they mean something. And the fact that, you know, people are shopping a little bit more and people are paying attention a little bit more to these kinds of things when they have a choice, they're taking them very seriously. So the next question I had was, doesn't matter. If I go to one of these hospitals versus one that didn't get ranked, does it matter? And sure enough, the JAMA Network has actually done a study on this. I'm going to skip to the results because it's I'm already past my 20 minutes here. So the results, 30-day mortality rates at top-ranked hospitals compared with non-ranked hospitals were lower for a whole bunch of cardiovascular conditions, which is interesting. However, 30-day readmission rates at the top-ranked hospitals when compared to non-ranked hospitals were similar. So, and patient satisfaction was higher at the top-ranked hospitals compared to the non-ranked hospitals. So it turns out that the ranked hospitals actually do perform at a higher degree in some cases. Maybe not everything. 30-day readmissions, not so much. So U.S. News, last thing on this. So U.S. News published, they made a whole bunch of changes this year as a response to the industry. They included patient-centered outcome measures. They included patient experience data. That's what I wanted to point out from this part. So patient, as previously announced, we incorporated a measure of patient experience in all 12 data-driven specialties, drawing on data from federally mandated hospital consumer assessment and health HCAHPS surveys. Positive patient experience is a crucial element in maximizing patient-centered quality, as it has been shown to correlate with better objectives. And they did some risk adjustment change, new definition of volume, narrower inclusion in criteria, orthopedics, and other stuff. I wish they weren't using HCAHPS. I think HCAHPS is you would never use something like HCAHPS in another industry. It's a pretty weak measure of patient experience, but alas, it's one of the measures that we probably have the most information from. So that's why they're using it. So anyway, they made these changes as a result of the industry. New process measure, additional outcome, certain ratings, removal of magnet. So now, drum roll please, U.S. News and World Report on Tuesday releases 30th annual Best Hospitals ranking, with Mayo Clinic topping the publication's honor roll for the 4th year in a row. I'll skip a bunch of this stuff. Let me, it's looking at cancer, cardiology, diabetes, ear, nose, and throat, geriatrics, gynecology, gastroenterology, GI surgery, nephrology, urology. You get the picture. So you got Mayo number 1, Massachusetts General number 2, Hopkins number 3, Cleveland Clinic, New York Presby, UCLA, UCSF, Cedars, NYU, Northwestern Medicine. There's your top 10. And then you have some great hospitals just beyond that. University of Michigan, Stanford, Brigham and Women's, Mount Sinai, UPMC, Presbyterian Shadyside, Keck Hospital, USC, UW, Madison, Wisconsin, Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, Penn Presbyterian, Mayo Clinic, Phoenix. Wow, Mayo Clinic got there twice. Number 1 for obviously their Rochester, Minnesota location, and then number 18 for their Phoenix location. And then you had two tied at number 20. You had Houston Methodist Hospital in Houston and Yale New Haven in Connecticut. Wow. So, we're going to end on that. That's about 20 minutes. That's all for this week. Every Friday, check out our interviews with industry influencers. Keep the comments coming. I love them. Bill at thisweekinhealthit.com. Good, bad, or indifferent. It all helps. Helps me to make a better show for you. Helps make sure I'm talking about the things that you care about. This show is a production of This Week in Health IT. For more great content, you can check out our website at thisweekinhealthit.com or the YouTube channel at thisweekinhealthit.com/video. Actually, thisweekhealth.com gets you there, and just click on the video link. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.